Disneyland opened its doors to guests in Anaheim, California on July the 17th, 1955, and since then more than 750 million visitors have flocked to the theme park. Classic rides such as Big Thunder Mountain, the Haunted Mansion, Jungle Cruise, Dumbo Flying Elephants, and Pirates of the Caribbean have thrilled families for decades. But one of the theme park's most famous rides hides a chilling past. This video lifts the veil on the dark history of Disneyland's Matterhorn Bobsleds. The Matterhorn Bobsleds is Disney's oldest roller coaster, but it wasn't one of the original attractions when the park opened in July 1955. During the construction of the park, dirt from the excavation of the moat for Sleeping Beauty's castle was piled in an area between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. The area was dubbed Holiday Hill and was improved with benches and pathways to encourage its use as a picnic area. In 1956, Disney installed the Skyway, a gondola system that traversed Holiday Hill, and one of the Skyway's large supports sat on top of the hill. But the hill was becoming notorious as a nighttime lover's lane, much to Disney's dismay. New Wild Mouse style roller coasters gained the attention of Disneyland executives, who began to consider applying this emerging technology to the creation of a toboggan-themed coaster ride on an artificial mountain at the site. In 1958, Walt Disney was on vacation in Switzerland during the filming of Third Man on the Mountain. Walt was impressed with the beauty of the real Matterhorn mountain, marvelling at its breathtaking views, and decided to integrate this into the design for the new ride at Disneyland. The construction of the Matterhorn Bobsleds ride commenced in 1958. Standing at 147 feet tall, it used forced perspective to make the mountain appear larger than it actually was. The coaster itself was the world's first tubular steel roller coaster, designed and built by the coaster builder Arrow Developments in collaboration with WED Imagineering. The mountain was used to hide the support for the Skyway, which ran through the middle of the mountain, giving guests views of the cars hurtling around the Matterhorn ride. Rumours abound about a basketball court located inside the mountain. It is true that a small attic-like space near the top of the Matterhorn structure does indeed contain a basketball rim, backboard and floor markings. A common piece of Disney lore has it that the inclusion of a basketball court was an attempt to get around Anaheim planning laws relating to the height of structures, as sport buildings were exempt. However, this legend is nothing more than a bit of fanciful fun. The Matterhorn was finished in 1959, but the city of Anaheim didn't have any regulations restricting the height of structures until the 1970s. The basketball hoop was actually installed by climbers who would regularly scale the mountain for the amusement of guests, as well as the occasional Disney character. The hoop was installed by one of the climbers to give them something to do during inclement weather. The Matterhorn Bobsleds opened on June 14, 1959, but it wasn't long before the first accident happened on the ride. Just 3 weeks after opening, on the evening of July 3, 1959, a 24-year-old Disneyland employee, Gary Duback, was checking the running gears of the bobsled ride. A car filled with passengers raced down the track, knocking Gary off the mounting, causing him to fall 100 feet. He survived the fall, sustaining severe injuries to his arms, legs and back, but thankfully recovered from his wounds. But 5 years later, on 15th of May 1964, 3 school friends were riding the Matterhorn. Mark Maples, a 15-year-old boy from Long Beach, California, was riding the bobsleds with his friends Douglas Gibbs and Gary Payne. Halfway through the ride, Mark reportedly stood up in the car, hit his head on the side of the concrete mountain, and fell out of the car onto the tracks. Gary Payne later said, "I was looking up, heard a noise, looked down and recognised Mark's sweater as he was falling out of the ride." Mark's body was found lying on a ledge 3 feet away from the track, 1/3 of the way down the mountain. Tragically, he died 4 days later on 19th of May 1964 as a result of his injuries. Disney's first fatal theme park accident. Investigations later revealed that the lap belts used to keep riders in their seats was undone. It was never proven how exactly the belt had opened. Some reports suggested that his restraint was undone by his ride companion, and others he had done it himself. Disney stated that the belt must have been in place when the ride started, because it was protocol to check all restraints before a ride sets off. An inquest into the event was never conducted by the Anaheim Police or Orange County Coroner's Office, who concluded that the death was purely accidental and as a result of horseplay. It has been suggested that Mark Maple stood up as part of a club initiation, but there was never any proof of this. The ride ran successfully for another 20 years before, on January 3rd, 1984, an eerily similar accident occurred. A 48-year-old woman from Fremont, California, Dolly Young, was riding the Matterhorn with a group of 5 friends when she suddenly fell out of the car onto the tracks. The Pichner family, riding in one of the gondolas of the skyway above the tracks, watched on in horror at what happened next. As Dolly struggled to get to her feet, another car came hurtling down the track towards Dolly. Don Pichner yelled at his daughters to look away just before the car crashed into Dolly, who was pulled under the car and suffered horrific injuries, including decapitation, and was killed instantly. Again, the investigation found that Dolly's seatbelt was not fastened. It is unclear whether she deliberately unfastened her belt or if the seatbelt had malfunctioned. However, her husband insisted that "my wife is not a frivolous or daring person. She was not some kid that would have stood up on a ride." Again, Disney insisted that the belt must have been secured before the ride started because the restraints were always checked. Nevertheless, Mr. Young sued Disney for damages, and an undisclosed out-of-court settlement was made by Disney. Interestingly, at the time of these horrific accidents, no organisation in the state had the authority to regulate theme park rides. OSHA had the capacity to conduct inspections, but at that time only in the capacity for the protection of workers, not for guests. But their remit was expanded to ensure everybody is now protected. In the years following these accidents, many changes have been made to the ride. After the accident in 1985, more secure belts were installed in the cars. Disneyland officials insisted this had nothing to do with the accident, but simply a result of the original manufacture of the belts going out of business. The skyway which passed through the mountain was also closed on November 9th, 1994. The skyway's cable and supports were dismantled in weeks, and the holes through which it passed filled in. Other holes in the mountain structure were also filled in, and the whole mountain was refurbished to make it look more realistic. Improvements were also made to the ride itself, notably the introduction of audio animatronic figures of a Yeti, known to fans of the park as Harold, and the enclosed passageways were rethemed as ice caves. Thankfully, since 1984, the ride has continued to operate safely, and has now been operating for 65 years in total. Ride safety has improved significantly over the years, to the point where theme park rides are extremely safe, even safer than riding in automobiles. And that concludes the dark history of the Matterhorn Bobsleds. If you found this content interesting, please like and subscribe to my channel, and also feel free to leave a comment about this video, or what other subjects you'd like me to cover in future videos. Thank you for watching.